Hello, my name is John Foster from Profox Companies. The objective of today's webinar is to give you an overview of our Navistools products. Profox is a Finnish-based company with offices in Helsinki, Stockholm, Sweden and Cambridge in the UK. We're an Autodesk partner, founded 20 years ago, and we offer manufacturing AEC and plant products from Autodesk. But our real specialization is Nawisworks, and we offer products and services centered around the Nawisworks product, including training, consulting, laser scanning solutions, software development, and our own add-on products for Nawisworks. Today we're going to be talking about Navistools, which is really a visual portal to allow you to integrate from a Navisworks model, from objects in the model, to external databases and documentation. So I'm going to be showing you the data manager and its associated product, the reporter, to report on information from a Navisworks model. Navistools is applied to a number of areas, as well as the usual design review application. It's used for asset management, used to manage point cloud data as a laser scanning portal, used to link to maintenance and inspection data, GIS information, and used for on-site fabrication and construction information. What I want to do is give you a brief demonstration to give you a flavor of the product. So what you can see here is a simple Navisworks model. It's a model of a building, an airport building at London Stansted Airport. Navistools can run with Autodesk Nawisworks Manage or Simulate. It can run on 32-bit and 64-bit versions. So what I've got here, you can see my Navisworks model. I've got a selection tree, and we can see it's made up mainly of DWG information. I've got some predefined selection sets here, and I've got some predefined saved viewpoints that we can see different views of the model. So initially what I'm going to do is go to Navistools. We find these in the add-ins pull down, so we can see Data Manager and Reporter. So if I select Data Manager, it opens the Data Manager panel, and we can use the File option to select a new database to start from scratch, or we can open an existing database. I'm already linked to an existing database of sample data that I've pre-populated with some information. What I'm going to do is, in this database, I've got a number of data tables, and select one of those tables and show you the interaction between information in the database and the model itself. So for instance, if I select this node in the database with associated information in the columns, so I double click on that, and we can see the associated object or node in the selection tree, and we can also have a look at where it is in the model and highlight it. We can also select from the selection tree, and we can see its associated link to the database. So we've got this bidirectional navigation between information in the database and from the Navisworks model. So we can navigate in a similar way that we do from the selection tree from within the database itself. Now, to put information into the database, very simple. We can either do it manually, enter manually, and add each field within each column that we define, or we can import from an Excel spreadsheet. And usually it's a combination of these two that we use to populate the database. I'm just going to show you a quick population of a data table within this database. So I'm going to use my icons to create a new data table. So it's asking me for the data table name, and I'm going to call it floors. And I've got some information based on floors in that model. We create it, and then I can go into it, and we can see it's empty. Now, because I've got information in there, what I can do is import information from an external spreadsheet. And I've got one here called floor dates. It's a schedule, a simple schedule of information for those floors. And we can see, if I come along here, that we've got start date, end date, and we've got two columns for comments and contract information. But as soon as I've brought that in, we can see that there is a direct link there between the database, the data table information, and the model itself. So I can select the second floor drawing, and it highlights it in the selection tree, and obviously we can see it as well using Navisworks tools in isolation. Interestingly as well, what we've got, if I select properties with that highlighted, we can see information associated with that. Let me give you another example, as there's two items attached to that. So basically, if I go into another table and I select, say, an item here, I can see the item highlighted, and if I select properties, now we can see that the database has updated the property information held against that object. So we can see that we have got within database some links that have been predefined and other information attached. So once we've updated the database, that information is held on as an object property. Very important from the fact that we can publish that information and it will be available in the free viewer, the Freedom product. So we could take this information off site and we could be able to see and interrogate that information on properties from the database in isolation. Okay, let's go back to the information that we brought into our new data table. So this has been read in from an external file, as we saw. The initial nodes were added using the model itself. So basically, if we try and add another table, the first thing we have to do, and let me call this more information about the floor. So we add a new table. Again, it's empty. First thing we have to do is add which nodes are going to be in the data table. And we can do this using standard Navisworks processes, either by selecting from the model itself, objects from the model, from the selection tree, or from selection sets. So I'm going to use selection sets in this case. Okay, so we go into floor information. It's an empty data table. What I need to do is identify which nodes I want to take into that table. So I take in floors. highlight floors, generate the data table, and we can see the nodes that we want to take into the data table there. To take that from the node list into the data table, we add rows into the table. So now we have a new data table, we've identified which nodes are going into it, and we can start adding further information. Or we can export this to an Excel spreadsheet, add further information in Excel, and then re-import it back in with that information. So various ways of adding information into the database. Going back to this one where I had predefined some start and end date information, we can also add, importantly, two special types of column information: status information, where we can have several status definitions in the database, and then we can attach a status to each node in the database and then interrogate it and query the status of objects in the model. And the other thing we can do is add a links column, and this allows us to add and manage links between objects in the model held in the database. So let me add those two columns. First one I'm going to add a status. So this identifies it by its name, knows it's a status column. And similarly, we're going to add another one called links. We can call it links 1 because we can have multiple links columns depending on the information we're holding. And then we can see we're adding more columns, and we can see, if we open this up, the links information as well. So we can add hyperlink information using this key. So I'm just going to add a document in here onto this floor information, and let's just find a specific. We can put some MEP maintenance information in on there, add it to the links 1 column, and we can see it added there. And we can have multiple links attached to the same node. We can also, if I select that first one, we can also add and manage hyperlink information from the right-hand mouse button. And this is where we can add status information as well. So for instance, for this item, I can pick from a predefined status, and we'll call that installed. So I've added a status, and we've added hyperlinks to that information. And we can see them in the relevant columns. Now we define status definitions for the whole database in the status data table. So you can see here I've got two different types of status. We've got architectural and then M&E, and we're checking statuses on. Our definitions are for checked, installed, installing, etc. And we can add multiple definitions and have multiple statuses held on different data on the same database item, and manage those statuses accordingly. We define statuses by color, and then we can check and view status in a number of ways. So using within the data table, what I can do is select, say, a number of statuses, and then we can display the status colors for those three statuses, and it updates the model with the color status as a check, which we can see there. And we can view those using the different viewpoints. So we can see the different color checks. And we can add and remove status colors using these two options at the top. So I'm going to reset those status colors as they are and go back to the initial viewpoint. Another way of checking status is from the data table itself. So if I go back to our floors data table, or into one which has more statuses defined, into our architectural one, and what I can do is query specific statuses. So if I want to check all the statuses for installed, for instance, then it will list all the items that have that specific status. And then I can show those in the model and in Navisworks by finding those statuses, those objects that have that specific status. And again, we can see information in the sheet, and we can see information in the selection tree. We can also see the information highlighted in the model itself. And the other way we can check status is, because all this information is held in the property, we can also go into the selection tree, use properties, and we can run a query from the database information in the property tree. So here we see status, we see links, we see all information that's in the database. So we can query objects in the model by database information using the selection tree as well. So a variety of ways of checking status and other database property information that's being brought into the model and then linked to the model. Okay, so lots of ways of interacting with the model. We have another tool that we can pre-process the model, so update the model prior to publishing, because as I mentioned before, an important point is that all this information linked into external databases is updated into the Navisworks properties. So we pre-process the model for publishing, publish the model in the normal way, and then we can view that information if we want to see it, if we want to include it within Freedom. I'll quickly show you here. We have the same model in Freedom that's been published, and although we have no API with Freedom, we can again use the selection tree to interrogate those properties. So we can see that all the database properties held, and we can, if we wanted to check status, for instance, installing, then we can select that and find those items in the model. And that goes for any other piece of database information. We can find where it is. We can have a look at links. So again, we've got some links down here. We can select those. We can see the link, and we can either cut and paste that into a browser, or we do have a little utility that will open that automatically if required. So very powerful having all that database information within the free viewer, within Freedom as well. So once we've built up our links using Data Manager, then we may want to start generating reports. That's where we use the other add-in included in the Navistools products, which is the reporter. So I'm just going to show you a quick report generation. Again, we populate the report from nodes of information selected from the selection tree or from selection sets of the most common. So normal standard Navisworks procedure. So if I open the reporter, first thing I want to do is identify which nodes I want to report on. Again, I can select a selection set here. Let's select floors, and we can update the nodes in the data table. And the next stage is to generate report information. So we go into reports and we can start identifying which information we want shown on the report for each item. And in this case we want database information. So I've got start, end, status and links information. So that will be enough. And then I can populate the data table for the report and we can see the information that is going to be reported on. We can add header information and put various information, and these will be shown on the title of the report. And then we can generate the report with portrait or landscape. And we can see the report defined. We do have templates that we are currently defining, which allows you to add your own company templates and make those selectable from the list. But that will be in the next release. And then when we've got our report generated, we can run an Excel or PDF export. So let me select PDF there. It generates the report. We'll call it webinar report and save that. So very simple to use, defining what information you want from the model. Not only reports on object and property information come from the original CAD information, but also, more importantly, the database information. Let's have a look at that quick report. And we can see it down here, a PDF. Very simple report of the floor information. So that shows reporter. Go back into Navisworks. So very simple, very easy to use along the lines of Navisworks itself. Very quick demo, but hopefully it gives you a flavour of what you can do with the product. For further information, please go to the website, the Profox website, www.profox.com, where you will find a trial version of Navistools and further information on the product. And any other questions, please contact myself, John Foster, or Ari Puskari at Profox. Thank you very much for your time.